Pre-training is very important. Why? Because identification of the business opportunity, finding and locating of the target group, and the selection of trainee and the trainers altogether. An entrepreneurship development program should be created in such a manner where there are enough facilities, where there are enough areas, providing opportunity to the right kind of people will definitely lead to some kind of success. Good morning and welcome to the session 3 in Unit 2 in Entrepreneurship and Small Business Management, where we are going to talk about the problems in conducting EDP, that's the Entrepreneurship Development Program. Now, the first thing that we need to talk about, the problems, rather I would say the challenges that we are looking into is that there's no policy at the national level. Now, that is quite important for all of us to understand and know. Why? Because when entrepreneurship started up in India, we never made it as a mandatory curriculum in most of the universities or in schools or colleges. We believe that entrepreneurship is at the will and wish of a person. Now, what happened is that after 2015, when India started picking up on the entrepreneurship wave, this became a mandatory course or a training that everybody wanted to join. But until then, what we are facing is that we don't have a policy at the national level. So though the government of India is fully aware about the importance of entrepreneurial development, we still do not have a policy for it. Now, when you look at the national healthcare policy or the education policy, the foreign policy, or when you talk about the revenue or trade policies altogether, there is some fixed guidelines. There are people who can tell you what exactly the scope and nature of operations that involves in that particular sector. But when you talk about entrepreneurship, it has only been looked up as a skill development program. So when you understand something only from a skill development program, you probably do not go and take it as a mandatory course of learning. So that is where we feel that the government should now come up with a policy that will be made mandatory, like how today we are studying it as a part of our syllabus. This should probably become an educational course right from the childhood days. That is, I would say that right from 6th standard, 7th standard onwards, because we have a lot of young, budding, talented youngsters who have the idea, who have the innovation to come up. So when we can give them the right kind of thought process at the right age, then definitely entrepreneurship can become even more a bigger success. So that's where we feel that, like the national education policy, we also need to bring a national entrepreneurship policy, because that will help the youngsters to realize the dream faster. The next thing is that when you are asking the government to formulate and enforce a policy, we need to look at a regional balance altogether. Many states in India have their own thought process and flavors and ideas towards this particular policy. Many states believe that it is enough that we follow one syllabus and we just continue teaching them on that. There are certain states who believe that we need to be more dynamic in nature, so we want to bring in more and more courses. Now, what happens here is that for the center, the debate, the argument of introducing something new, bringing in a change factor or policy itself remains a very big challenge. So that cannot be accepted in the long run. What we need to understand and how we need to understand is that we want to see that this entrepreneurship becomes a complete promotional aspect among every school, every colleges, every institution in India, which can actually understand and develop the entire system. Now, the other thing that we need to see here is that the problems at the pre-training phase. Now, that's very, very important. Why? Because let me just put this word again for you, the word called as pre-training altogether. Now, pre-training is very important. Why? Because identification of the business opportunity, finding and locating of the target group, and the selection of trainee and the trainers altogether. Moment when you tell people that you have to take up an entrepreneurial training program, the first question that starts coming in is the identification of the business. How many of us have really identified a business that is viable, that is practical, that can be made to grow in the coming years? Now, most of us do not know that because we only have an idea that is floating in our mind. Now, most of the youngsters have the same kind of philosophy in their mind. They have brilliant ideas, no doubt about it, but the feasibility of idea needs to be understood to the highest level possible. Now, what happens here is that when you are selecting somebody for some training program or selecting somebody for some kind of activity, the most important thing that we need to understand, that we need to grow with, is that the identification of the right kind of business. Now, you might feel that I want to start a manufacturing company today, or I want to start a healthcare company, or I want to start an automobile manufacturing company. Now, the idea is good, but what is the feasibility of the idea? How far can you go ahead and withstand the pressure or the pain areas in that business? So what happens here is that even before the training starts, to make you an entrepreneur, the most important thing that we need to realize here is that, are we ready to understand the nature of business that we have selected? So the pre-training phase, even before you land up in the school, you should have at least understood that there is something called as this particular business. These are the challenges of the business, and this is why I need to take forward and move with it. The second part of this is that now finding the location of the target group. Of late, when we are speaking about this target group, days have gone ahead where we are now completely transformed ourselves into a digital era. So anything and everything is right out of your mobile phones that you carry in your pockets. You don't have to worry anymore about your customer or about your clients because they are all located in your pocket. But the most important thing here is that not every business can be run out of the virtual setup. You need businesses which still are dependent on the physical process, the location altogether. So in the case of a manufacturing where you want to set up a plant, you want to see the accessories and inventories available for it and how I need to export goods to that required area. So now what happens is that finding and locating the target group who is actually interested and who can be actually taken into account for training. Because these kind of questions are important for us to know at this stage, rather than just completing an entrepreneurial development program and coming back and saying that, sir, that was not really effective because I do not know still how to start a business. So what we try to tell people very clearly is that you need to identify these factors of where, how, and how the business is going to go forward. Now, this question of target group is very important. Why? Because 99% of us resent back to the same cycle, saying that it is always better that we work under somebody for some time. Now, I do not know that exact meaning of some time because certain people might like to work for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, we do not know. But you don't come up with that nature, with that gut and intuition feeling, saying that, yes, from tomorrow onwards, I am an entrepreneur, I will not look back. So that feeling of taking up that decision and coming forward with all boldness takes a long time. So what happens here is that you might take 100 people today for a training program. But not of all the 100 people will be interested to become entrepreneurs. Hardly 5 or 10 of them would seek that program as something very effective. And for the remaining 90% of the people, this will just be another theoretical input. So the biggest challenge here is that how do you select people, the right kind of people who can be a part of your program? And they need to understand this, that EDP is not just about any kind of formal training, or it is not any kind of a mandatory training program where you spend some hours. But EDP is a life-changing program. You need to understand that EDP is all meant to transform you from a manager to a leader. So unless and until that concept sinks inside your mind, you will not be able to conduct the program successfully. Followed by selection of trainee and trainers. Now, when you look for people, the right kind of people who can motivate, who can teach, and who can take forward, it becomes a very big challenge. Why? Because again, if you go back to the EDP program, the most interesting part of the story is that most of the trainers have a theoretical knowledge about the subject. They are not people who have already run the business. They are not people who have already understood the business. They are only people who have probably studied few case studies and they come back to train people. But the question here is that for an entrepreneur, he does not require advice. He requires solutions. He expects that the person who is going to train him already understands the nature of business. So tomorrow, when I attend a training program which is going to help me in terms of how to run a healthcare system in India, I want a person who is already running it. I want a doctor or I want an entrepreneur who has already set up a hospital or a healthcare system and undergoing that transformation altogether, because he will be the right kind of person to tell me what are the challenges that lie ahead. So selection of trainee and trainer becomes a very, very important question for the successful running of the program. The other side of this trainee and training program is that most of the trainers expect that the training program is only on a capsule based or a module based. So I will just complete the capsule, I will just complete the module and the training is over. And for the person who is receiving the training, he just feels that by attending that training, I will become a successful entrepreneur. So you can see that from both sides, there is a lot of misconception. One side, people think that this is like a one-time booster dose. If I just attend the course, I have been successful. The other side, people think that since I have conducted the course, now entrepreneurs will start coming up in my country. Now, both of these two things are on the wrong side. What is needed here is that you need to do the hand-holding exercise for quite some time. And for the person who is getting trained, he also needs to spend some time, some continuous hours of learning. Why? Because this is not going to be a one-step exercise or a one-time exercise. This needs lot of motivation, understanding, and you need to go with the trainer in terms of understanding how the business is operating, where are all the challenges, what kind of finance I need to look for, what kind of people, what is the formalities involved in the export-import. There are so many things that we need to go with the documentation part also. So that's why I say that the pre-training is a very, very important phase where you identify the purpose, the need, the target, and the trainer so that the training program becomes successful. Moving further, the overestimation of trainees. Now, this is one very big challenge that happens in our country. Under EDPs, it is assumed that the trainees have an aptitude for self-employment and training will motivate or enable them. Now, that's absolutely a very big misconception altogether. The trainees are people like you and me. They're all common people who just have some ideas in their mind. They are not self-motivated, self-disciplined people who have the heights of innovation already filled. They're just people like you and me who have a lot of expectations in life, and they come to a program because they believe that that program is going to change their life, that program is going to give them a solution to start an enterprise. Now, the question here is that the trainees need not be estimated to be as leaders. The trainees need to be looked as beginners. That is where the program success is completely embedded. Why? Because when you look at them as self-motivated employees or self-motivated personalities altogether, then the trainer would start thinking that I don't have to go through the basics. I will just give them some advanced tips and finish off this entire exercise. For the people who are sitting there and listening to the trainer, they feel that this program is not effective. They are just talking about it and it's no practicality at all. So what we need to do is that the assessment of the people, that is very, very important here. Why? Because you need to see what kind of background, what kind of mindset the people who are attending the training have. If they are really motivated, if they've already started a business, they've already known through the factors of documentation and the formalities that are involved, well and good, because you already have a platform that can take you forward. But if you have a set of people in which more than 80% of the group, of the target group, do not have any idea about business, then it is always better that we start from the scratch. We take the people step by step into this entrepreneurship program. The most important thing here is that these agencies tend to overestimate, especially in terms of the educated youth. That's the second problem which I would like to say in terms of entrepreneurship. I am qualified with a particular degree or with a particular post-graduation altogether. But that doesn't mean that I know about business. I might have studied a couple of subjects, couple of theories saying that I know about business, I know about policies, I know about strategies. But is that what entrepreneurship really looks at? The answer is no. Entrepreneurship looks at innovation. Entrepreneurship looks at situational handling skills. So you need to know that how to handle a situation with ease and with comfortability. You need to have certain amount of skills to do that. So for which I would say that the educated youth are good enough that because they have the basic education, so making them understand is easier. No doubt about it. But you cannot take the educated youths as take it for granted saying that they know everything. They have to be considered only as beginners who will start the business from the scratch, who will make their entry into any enterprise like any other person who has started in this world. The most important thing is that when you go back and ask them this question, do you know exactly how to apply for a loan? The answer is no. Do you know exactly how to recruit a person? They do not know. Do you know how to put up a marketing banner or a board for you? They do not know. So what happens here is that you circle back to the same question asking, am I running something really successful in terms of EDP? And the answer becomes no. Why? Because as I told you, 80% of the people are still unaware of the entire process. So this is more about an awareness program. So that's why I would say EDP is more about awareness rather than the training itself. You need to know what exactly is happening in your field, in your vicinity. Once you know that this is the things that are happening in entrepreneurship, then automatically training becomes an add-on. It becomes an effective method to make you a successful entrepreneur. Now, moving further, the duration of EDP. An attempt is made during the conduct of EDP to prepare prospective entrepreneurs thoroughly to go through the problems which they will be encountering in terms of running their enterprise. Now, this is something which is very, very simple, but yet this has to be understood in little bit of depth. Now, what happens in most of the EDP programs, they will give you a case study which you need to go through and start understanding the problems. Why? Because that case study is a live example of what will happen in your business also. Most of the people look at the case study as a theoretical exercise. They are fantastic in solving that case study. They come back with innovative solutions and then they go back to the company, but they're not able to solve their problems. That is because the case study was good Theoretically enough, as a third party advice, you were able to do it all together. But how will you solve your problems in the enterprise? Which means to say that the EDP program has to make you prepared, has to make you go through that much amount of training, that much amount of importance in terms of what exactly you will encounter in setting up your business. So what I would suggest here is that most of the EDP programs are anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks, which is very good enough to install the basics in the mind of the entrepreneurs. Now, what we need to understand is that this 4 to 6 weeks, that is typically about 1 to 1.5 months, is very good enough for you to understand only the basic part. After this time, the next 2 to 3 months, you need to spend time again in terms of setting up the business and seeing where exactly the challenge is. Why? Because when I talk about the business setup, there are many kinds and forms of business. Certain businesses are easy to enter, difficult to exit. Certain businesses are difficult to enter, easy to exit. So what happens here is that you would see that the objectives of development will itself keep varying. So what an entrepreneurship program should do is that start creating a follow-up from here. There should be a continuous follow-up for at least 3 to 4 months where they handheld the entrepreneur, they put him across through a very tight program which actually guides him through the exact problems. Then the entrepreneurship program will become even more effective. The next one, non-availability of infrastructural facilities. Now let's look into it. No prior planning is done for the conduction of EDP programs. EDP is conducted in rural backward areas just like that because we don't have a proper infrastructural facility. Now this is not a problem of EDP alone, but this is the problem of most of the institutions in India. That is because we never planned for the infrastructure. We only planned for the people and profit. Today, if I want to start an institution, I don't really calculate about the infrastructure. What I want to do is that I want to start an institution which is minimal in size and maximum in profit. So I just want to start a company with 1 or 2 people, but I want that 1 or 2 people, including me, to earn the maximum profit for the organization. Then something strikes back in my mind saying that as I grow, I will also make my company bigger. But in reality, these things are not going to happen. The same thing affects the infrastructural training also. I mean, in terms of the EDP program. When you are conducting an EDP program, you need to understand that you need to have the proper facilities, the accessories, that is the classroom, the speakers, boarding, lodging facilities. There needs to be a proper space. There needs to be a proper venue. All these factors have to be understood very, very clearly. It is not enough that you just conduct an EDP program out of a classroom with some 10 or 20 benches put across. And that is not exactly an EDP program because that will not lead you to any effectiveness at all. What people will do is that they will just attend the training and they will leave that place. But that is not going to add any value to their life or to the entrepreneurial journey at all. An entrepreneurship development program should be created in such a manner where there are enough facilities, where there are enough areas that have been provided with accessories to conduct the on-field experiment. You need a lot of space. You need to take people around. You need to put them across the field. You need to tell them this is exactly how a building will look. This is exactly how a computer room needs to be there. This is exactly how you need to design your office space. This is your office cabin. This is the front office. So you need to tell people with models, with dimensions that will make the entrepreneurial space altogether more interesting. So when you say people that, today when you can start working from small office, home office, a concept called as SOHO, you can just see it across in Google. You will be able to understand the concept. It says small office, home office. You can start your business right from your home. So this kind of concept has to be explained in the training itself. How do you start an office from your home itself? Today, people talk about capabilities like work from home, WFH, work from home. But when you want to work from home, can your home be converted to your work front area? What are the challenges of converting your home to a work front area? What kind of facilities and technology you need to make that home front area to a workspace altogether? Is it enough that I just have a laptop and some connections and I start working? Or is it that I need to go through some changes? So all these kind of important factors can be explained only when that EDP program has necessary infrastructural capabilities. They need to build those demo places. They need to have those demo zones, models all together where they can take the trainees, make them understand how the changes are coming in. Now, similarly, I would also like to say that, now, for example, a person wants to start a fitness chain. I want to start a gym and I want to grow up as an entrepreneurial thing. I also want to become like Gold's Gym kind of thing. I want to start, or I want to start like, the cult fit kind of chain altogether. Now, if I want to start a business like that, I need to be trained by a person who already owns a gym or a fitness chain, because then only I will be able to understand the space, the modulations, how much equipment, what do I need to place, how many trainers, how it needs to look, what kind of flooring, what kind of ventilation. All those factors are very, very essential. If I just go and attend a class which is of 40 hours of training or 80 hours of training, where people just show me in a PPT about how a gym really looks, or how you need to color your gym, how you need to put your equipment, that is not going to be of any use to me. So I need infrastructural facilities that will guide the trainees to the next level. Followed by improper methodology. Now, what is an improper methodology? The course contents are not standardized by most of the agencies engaged in EDPs themselves, and they do not know about it. They're not clear about the content at all. What has been a very big challenge in India is that moment you talk about the education sector itself, the one thing that we need to admit ourselves on this factor is that we are not updated. So that's a very big challenge that we are facing today. Most of these standards that we talk about, be it a CBSE, ICSE, whichever boards we are talking about, we always tend to follow a pattern for 5 years, 6 years, and we don't want to go on a change mode at all. The similar thing happens also in EDP. Most of the programs are outdated. The contents are not changed. The contents are not ratified at all. The contents are something which are very, very theoretical, and they are very, very preliminary in nature. When you are conducting a training program, you need to have the best of the best materials which will try to address the problems of today and not 20, 30 years back. So that is where what happens is that most of our students and youngsters feel that the material, the information that is being provided to them is outdated, because things are changing at a rapid pace altogether. Now, for example, today when we talk about a subject like information technology, the youngsters out there, the kids I would like to talk about, they know even much higher than the people who are today working in some of the technologies. The reason is that with the advent of internet, Google, YouTube and other factors coming into picture, they have been able to scale themselves up at a rapid pace. So today, a third standard kid can also do programming, and it is true. We are seeing so many success stories in India. The reason is that they are constantly updating themselves by looking at the new avenues of technology that's available to them. But what happens in EDP is that 99% of the time, the training program does not update itself. They just go on the same module, training batches after batches, trying to tell the same thing in a different factor. Now, that is not accepted as a part of an EDP training program. What we need exactly is that we want to see that every time the material is refreshed. The material is up to date. The information is practical enough that it addresses the problem of today and not yesterday. Now, moving further, the mode of selection. There is no uniform procedure adopted by various agencies in order to identify the prospective entrepreneurs. The moment anybody comes to you and says that, sir, I want to become an entrepreneur, what does the training program exactly do is that just enroll you for a program. They feel happy, okay, this person should enroll on the program, that's it. But are you a prospective entrepreneur? Do you really pursue the journey of entrepreneurship so seriously? That question has never been asked. What has been looked into is that just conduct the program, take the people inside, go back, record it and say that batch after batch we had 40 students or 50 students who were working there. Now that is not expected at all. The mode of selection needs to be proactive in nature. It needs to understand that people have to undergo through some selection mode. They have to bring out their own ideas. They have to bring out their own presentation. It has to be checked. It has to be verified. And then we can see that whether this person is true enough, capable enough to be a part of this program. Now, what happens here is that providing opportunity to the right kind of people will definitely lead to some kind of success. But providing opportunity to people who are not even interested will not lead to anywhere. That would be a waste of time, money, and energy altogether. So that's why the mode of selection needs to be very, very proactive, very, very dynamic in nature, where they put the candidates into test and they select the right kind of candidates. Now, the non-availability of competent faculty, the next thing that we need to see here. Now, whenever we talk about the word called as competency among teachers, the most important thing that we need to understand is that teaching is an art. Teaching is a science. Teaching has got a lot of factors behind it. Teaching is all about inspiring people. It is not about reading out the content. Teaching is not about just coming and finishing out the syllabus that has been mentioned. It is all about diving to a depth, making the content even more interesting so that the person on the other side is completely inspired. So that's why I would say that the competency among faculty should not be just on content. It is not about the qualifications. It is not about the number of degrees. It is not about the number of years. It is all about the innovative methods that you have started using, that you have come across, so that you can make the training, you can make the learning even more interesting. So that's what is very, very important when it comes to the EDP factor also. You need to make the training more interesting. You need to bring in faculties who are more competent enough in terms of bringing innovation, in terms of bringing in change. Now, what happens here is that when you go to the rural side of India, you don't get competent faculties. Most of the faculties stick on to the big metros, and the non-availability of faculties in some areas make the EDP program even more a failure. Now, that's where you need to understand that competency of the teachers is not just enough in terms of attracting to few centers, but the availability of teachers, putting the teachers to every single zone that is required, will make this EDP program even more successful. Now, the poor response of financial institution when you move forward, the most biggest challenge is that I've gone through all kind of trainings. Yes, I went through all the factors all together. But then when I really want to start my business, nobody is ready to give me loan. Everybody goes back and talks about formalities, documentation. They say that this is not there, that is not there. And I go back with a dejected mind saying that there is no point in becoming an entrepreneur. Let me go back and work under somebody. The reason is that the lack of support from the financial institution, though the country knows very well entrepreneurship is mandatory, we need to promote it, we need to push it. But the banks and the financial institutions still have a back seat in this particular area, in this particular thought. They think that this is going to be an NPA, a non-performing asset for us. Why? Because if we give loans to young entrepreneurs, we do not know whether the money is going to come back. So what results here is that these entrepreneurs who fail to comply with conditions, who do not know the procedures or who are not able to get the loans, automatically go back disappointed, and the entrepreneurship journey comes to an end. So what I would like to suggest here is that you need to make this training understandable even to the financial institution. You need to link them with the program. You need to get sponsorships from these financial institutions who understand the importance of MSME today, the micro, small, medium enterprises altogether, because then only they will also be able to understand and tell them practically in the program itself how exactly the financing options work, which will make the entrepreneurial journey even more meaningful. Moving forward, with this, I come to the end of this particular session. I hope and believe that all the information that is being shared through this particular session is of great help and resource to you. In the upcoming sessions, we will be talking more about the entrepreneurial development programs. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.